guys, Elle here. So I have no idea what I'm going to call this video. Basically, I feel like if you clicked on it, whatever I decide to call it, you are sort of in for a treat. I think this stuff is truly fascinating and such a fantastic way to learn tarot and really explore the Major Arcana and what's going on there. What the subject of this video is different ways, really, in which you can organize or group the Major Arcana into different groups, you know, into things like pairs or pairs of opposites, numerologic relationships that exist. One of the first things that you learn when you start studying tarot, right, is the Fool's Journey and the three septenaries that exist in the Major Arcana. Basically, oh, there it is. Basically, it's the Fool's Journey, right? So he's not included in this organization, but it goes. There's 21 cards left over, so you go from 1 to 7. I got my mini deck here to make stuff fit, and the pattern repeats again, right? This is the organization that I used when we talked in Living the Tarot about the Major Arcana. There's a beautiful symmetry to this. Ta-da! So you have 3 sets of 7, and also what you've created are 7 ternaries here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all the way across. You got 7 of them. So basically what I want to do in this video is show you guys a few more setups like this. We'll talk a little bit more about this one. But I have, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4. But I have one that I want to go into a bit more depth with, because I think that the last one I show you here, also called the Arrangement of 9, is one of the most enlightening ways to look at the Major Arcana. It certainly was a life-changing exploration of the tarot for me, that one. So we'll go into a lot more detail with that. But we could absolutely 100% make more of these videos down the line and go into way more detail with even any of the first few I'm going to show you guys. But this one's pretty cool. You know, it's the Fool's Journey. The Fool visits all of these. They are all in order, but you've also created these cool ternaries, like I said. This particular layout is probably as old as tarot itself. It's also very common sense, you know? There's 21 numbered cards. So they break up into 3 sets of 7 very easily, you know? It just feels right. Now, there are lots and lots of different authors and writers over the years who have talked about this and what the 3 different levels represent, what the different ternaries represent, and so on and so forth. It's really cool to sit with this kind of stuff, guys, because as you look down through, you see how much the feelings of these cards, the focus of the card, the look of the card. You can do this with Marseille, you can do it with any deck. But I think it's especially good with more esoteric decks, where the symbolism is really very on point, you know, it's very on purpose. They understand the greater journey that's taking place through their decks, you know. But really, I love, you know, in the final column here, in the 7, the Chariot, Temperance, and the World, it all feels like a bit of a completion, you know. There's this sense of there's a subtle sense of ending here, or on to the next, a transformation, or balancing. I know there's a lot of different ways to interpret the 3 septenaries. One of the common ones, of course, being the first row is all about like the self, or personal, or psychological development. The second row is all about social development, or sort of like even discovering yourself in the world, or a development of the collective self, a bit of mental self-discovery. You know, there's definitely a lot of mind stuff happening here. You can even look at the first row as the physical body, even. And then the final row is your universal, or your spiritual development, the self ascending to spirit. Just like when we talked about the alchemical tarot, right? The devil is the place you know, from the devil to the world, from 15 on up, all the way up to the Fool, even perhaps. This is our ascent, our spiritual ascent, from the depths of matter through the Heros Gamos, the union of sun and moon, the resolution of opposites, and your rebirth as a spiritual being. Paul Foster Case has a really interesting way of looking at this mandala, if you will. For him, the very first row here is the dominant mental states or principles. And the second row is the intermediary being the key word, but intermediary activities. I'll explain this. And the third being the results, you know, or what results when the first row expresses itself through the intermediary, or expresses that card's principles through this intermediary. So you could say, for example, let's take this first row here, magician, strength, and devil. That the one symbolized by the magician, the monad, right? The universal one, or the self, right? The self who is in control of the four elements. Once he gains control of the life force, or perhaps his animal nature, the universal life force, whatever, however you want to look at it. But what results here is the ability to overcome the illusion of matter with the devil card. Or really the beginning of the liberation of spirit from matter, from the grips of the devil himself. Oh my god, I am just now realizing that I could do a whole video on just this. But I'm going to stop there. But really, with these sort of spreads, let's call them spreads, you know, you're not necessarily performing any sort of divination here, but what it is so important to do is to just sit with it. You know, look at them. Tarot is a symbolic image language, you know, it speaks to you visually. So look for similarities, look for differences. It's great to sit and journal with, write all the notes you see, how the pairings and the groupings make you feel. And of course, it's even wonderful to sit with a book open on the subject of the layout that you're looking at, what's going on numerologically here. In this layout, you also see that the addition of 7 to each gives you the next. So, you know, 1 plus 7 equals 8, your strength, and 8 plus 7 gives you 15. And in the final spread, I show you guys the arrangement of 9, where we'll go all the way to the Hermit and then repeat underneath. It's the same thing. You gain the card by the addition of 9. But in that case, there's some other really interesting things that happen numerologically. Anyway, these kind of mandalas or layouts or spreads are really very powerful. You can do this with minor arcana cards too, but I think the hero's journey that we see here in the major arcana is especially powerful. And it's especially powerful with a more esoteric deck like this, like the Rider-Waite-Smith. But it's a very powerful practice to have, to just sit with the major arcana cards in different orientations and different groupings. Okay, so I switched decks. This is the Oswald Wirth deck, but another really common way to examine the major arcana is to lay them all out in a circle. Well, this kind of looks like an eye, but it's my lame attempt at a circle that fits on the screen of my camera. But basically, now, by the by, the Oswald Wirth book, oh my god, what is this book called? Oh, Tarot of the Magicianster, is almost wholly devoted to studying pairs and groupings like we're talking about today. So it's a great book to pick up if you're gonna do some of these spreads here. But this is one of the very first ones that he talks about, hence my Wirth cards here. These are the little ones that come in the book, actually, Tarot of the Magicians. So what he talks about doing is, I don't think he actually says it in there, but what I like to envision is this circle folding on itself. So you're creating 11 pairs because you have 22 cards, right? So there are 11 pairs created in this way. So what you end up having in with Wirth's correspondences here anyway is you have the Magician and the Fool. At the bottom you have 10. Ah, that's out of order. And then when you fold things over at the bottom here, you have 11 and 12 come together, forming a pair, and so on and so forth. You have 2 and 21, the High Priestess and the World become a pair. Number 3, the Empress, gets paired with 20, Judgment, and all the way around. So some of the things that Wirth explores here with these pairs is the Magician and the Fool both represent a starting point. He notes that the High Priestess and the World, number 2 and number 21, are both about the perception of the unknown. One of my favorite ones that he talks about in his book actually is the Lovers and the Star. And it might even be interesting to note that 17 and 6 may even be related numerologically. If you subtract 1 from 7, you get 6. Well, I don't know, maybe, yes, no. By the way, all of the mathematics that I talk about in this episode are not like normal mathematics. I do know how to add and subtract, guys. What we're talking about is mystic math, basically. Theosophic reduction. When I say reducing a number, it means adding up the digits. So if you were going to reduce the number 11, it would be 1 plus 1. That's all. One of the pairings that Wirth talks about here that I really enjoy is that you get 6 and 17 together, the Lovers and the Star, and how they both kind of determine your acts. The Lovers, in the Lovers card here, you see a choice, right? It can be the choice between following your head or following your heart, vice or virtue. And then in the Star card, you see sort of a greater destiny at work, the idea that maybe everything is written in stone, your future is set, you have a destiny, that kind of an idea. And there are two very different ways of looking at things. There's this idea of predestination inherent in the Star card that I think is wonderful. But while, the Star card may be more about surrendering to God, surrendering to the star, surrendering to spirit and destiny and to the wheel of fortune itself, the Lovers is sort of the other side of that coin, right? Where you have to make decisions and you have to follow through with your choices, and it's difficult. It might be interesting to note that the Lovers card falls on the first septenary, like we showed before, the 3 septenaries. The Lovers shows up on the first one, where it's all about the physical and the body, and 17, the Star, shows up on the third one, where it's all about these greater spiritual concepts and the ascent of the spirit and the return of the soul to spirit and to unity from matter and duality. Okie dokie. So another really common way to look at the Major Arcana is to go from the 1 to the 10, basically like you have in the pip cards in the Minor Arcana, right? So, okay, guys, actually, sorry, I'm going to do it this way. I have the 1 here, the 5 here, and the 10. Imagine in your heads now that it does go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, you take the rest of your cards, right, and you line them up accordingly here. So this is 11. After the 10, Justice is 1 again, right? 11. 10 being the ending here, 1 being the start of the next, so 1 and Magician are related. 1 and 11. 12, 13, 14, those would all line up also, but here 15 becomes associated with the Pope. 5 in the first line, 15 in the next. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Ba-doop. Judgment. So the Wheel of Fortune lines up with Judgment. You could, of course, take, the end and the beginning or something here. These could be a pair, the Fool and the World, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, however you want to look at it. But I am stopping at the 10 here because this, guys, is a fantastic way to explore your Minor Arcana cards. I feel like what ends up happening here, I don't feel like these specific pairings necessarily are trying to say that they are the same, but they are certainly aspects of a similar force. It's almost like they're opposites in some cases. There's some sort of a relation. We already talked about the relationship between the magician and strength. But what's the relationship between the two fives here? The Pope and the devil. Does the Pope mediate between the two worlds? Does the devil mediate between the two worlds? Yeah, he kind of does. Communication with above, communication from below, even ideas as simple as that can help you explore your minor arcana. 2, 3, 4, 5, or in this case, your 5 of cups. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whoops, 10. So now Jodorowsky talks a lot about this in his book. He explores a lot of the minor arcana through their major arcana associations as he associates them. But this can be a really valuable exercise for not only getting to know, for not only looking at the major arcana in a different way through comparing and contrasting, finding similarities and finding differences, not only in how they look, but what they mean on different levels. But not only for all that, exploring the major, also for exploring the minor arcana. Okay, guys, here it is. It's not very pretty, but one of the most important layouts I ever learned for the major arcana. Now, this is sort of a progression. This kind of a layout is the subject of basically an entire book, Tarot Revelations by Richard Roberts. It's a fantastic book. Now, that was the first time I'd ever seen the cards actually laid out like this and explored in that way, but the numerology behind the layout is something that I've been exploring for a really long time. One of the things that you learn about and study when you study numerology and even, mystery school traditions when it comes to numbers is that 9 is a very powerful and important number. 9 is attainment and completion in a way. It's really the final number, as by the time you get to 10 and up to 2 digits, you're no longer 1 digit after 9, right? But the 10, you are able to reduce it. 1 plus 0 equals 1. So in essence, 1 and 10 are really the same energy. You see it expressed differently in the minor arcana, right? 1 through 10. Is 10 being completion, 1 being beginning, but it's beginning and end. It's a wheel, as you see the wheels down here with the ones, or the first column. It's interesting to note, too, that a lot of people always see this connection happening, too, right? The lovers gone to the devil, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and chained at the foot of the devil. And if you don't instantly see other, associations, how this is telling a story, it's okay. Hang on, I'm going to walk you through. But anyway, 9, attainment, right? Numerologically, it is a very special number also. Any number multiplied by 9 reduces to 9. Again, this is mystic math. This is theosophic reduction. So, for example, 2 times 9 equals 18, right? 1 plus 8 equals 9. It always reduces to 9, no matter what number you multiply by 9. Also, any number added to 9 will give you that first number again through this reduction. So take 6, the lovers, plus 9 equals 15, the devil. 5 plus 1, 15, right? 1 plus 5 equals 6. You're back to the lovers. Just all these interesting, little things that 9 does. 9 is a triplication of the triplicate. It is a complete expression of the 3 worlds. What it does in esoteric thinking and gnostic thought really is a 9 added to something moves it to the next level. 9 subtracted from something moves it down a level. And you can see that sort of up and down taking place here, especially over here where you have these 4 rows, or these 4 columns, I should say, where you have above and below and a center. So really what's happening here is we have all our numbers 1 to 9, because 9 really, when we think about it, is the end. And each number And every number, 1 through 9, like we talk about all the time, right? Every number has a meaning sort of attached to it. It expresses something. And what you see here are these correspondences. So basically, you know, the Wheel of Fortune is an expression of the 1 as a 10. So really, if you want to understand how every card after the 9 expresses itself numerologically, this is sort of how you do it. 18 expresses itself as a 9. And we'll talk about that. But also what happens here is 18 does that because of the addition of 9, but also look at the number. It's 18. It's simple theosophic reduction. 1 plus 8 equals 9. The star is 17. 1 plus 7 equals 8. Same thing down here. That's why the sun is here also. Although 10, 1 plus 0 is 1. 19, 9 plus 1 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. Judgment, 20. 2 plus 0 is 2. And the world at 3 because it's card number 21. And 2 plus 1 equals 3. The Fool does fit here perfectly. This is one of the most interesting columns to explore. But we place him there because he is the end of the sequence. The Fool, of course, is numbered 0 here, but he also bears the number 22. 2 plus 2 equals 4. So even though he's not labeled 22, he does still just fit perfectly into the sequence, of course. And just like the Hermit at number 9 faces back along his whole row, looking back at everything he's done, standing at the heights of the mountain, so too does the Fool up in the heights of spiritual attainment, the heights of spirit in the sky above, looks back on all the tarot cards. Because he also represents the end as well as the beginning, especially here in the Rider-Waite-Smith, where you see him about to leap from a cliff off into the abyss of matter and start this wonderful journey all over again. So as you're going through and looking for similarities and differences, one of the things you look at is the imagery and the colors. You know, here in the first row, you see much more active, fiery kinds of colors. By the way, this would be much better suited to using the Albano waite, I think. The coloring is better for this kind of stuff. You can, of course, use any deck, too. If you do this with a historic deck, an old deck like a Tarot de Marseille or something, obviously your justice and your justice and your strength will be swapped. There's still plenty of interesting correlations to make, but actually I think that when we go through, you'll see how this justifies what Waite did by swapping the two. It really makes a whole lot of sense here in this order, and this may even be why that was done. Another thing, actually, that the numerology here has always done for me, which I find very helpful, is if you do that reduction the same way that we ended up with this layout, right? Like if you take the sun, 1 plus 9 equals 10, which if you add a 0 to gives you 100, which is the numerical value of the Hebrew letter Kaf, which is the one that I would associate with the sun card. If you follow the French way of doing it. And the same is true of the moon here too, right? 1 plus 8 equals 9, and the numerical value of, what's the moon? Zadi is 90. You know, everything over 10, which in this case would be Yod at the Wheel of Fortune, which has a numerical value of 10. The next one at 11 is, Kaf, and it becomes 20, and then 30, and 40, and 50. But again, you add 13 plus 1, 4, you get 40. So it's just a handy little trick for me to remember the numerical values. So you could say that the 1 through the 9, just in general, the numbers 1 through 9, are sort of like numerical archetypes. And those are visually represented in the tarot as 1 through 9. And through reduction, every card that is below the 1 through 9 expresses the energy, you could say, of the archetype or the archetypal number above it. And the way in which the cards in this layout sort of interact with each other is really interesting to explore. So really I'm just going to focus on some of the sort of random details in the story that make this whole sort of image really work well. Now, real quick before we get started, I am going to talk about things alchemically a little bit as we go through, and I am going to make another video on like alchemy and the Major Arcana or something very soon, because that sounds like fun right now actually. But just in general, because we're looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith, which is a very alchemical deck, I just want to explain a couple things real quick. So the tarot, especially the Rider-Waite-Smith, is definitely an alchemical journey where you have the descent of spirit into matter, and followed by the ascent of spirit from matter. A return to unity and back again. It's cyclical, though we're not laid out in a circle. The whole thing is cyclical. You can even go in reverse. And I just want to make reference to this, even though the cards aren't in that order. What you see when you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, all the cards separated out into 3, is again you have these 7 triads. And what 1, 2, 3 is associated with would be the planet Mercury and like Quicksilver in alchemy, and what is it, 4, 5, 6 with Venus, 7, 8, 9 with Mars and iron. You know, each is associated with a planet and with a metal. The 16, 17, 18 would be the moon and silver, 19, 20, and 21 being the sun and gold. Now, there's lots of different ways to sort of make these correspondences and different tweaks that people have and things like that. But more or less, that is how I understand the tarot. And what happens when you move through these things, when you move through the archetypes of the Major Arcana, is you go through each of these qualities, each of these metals, at first becoming more dense and more gross, until at 16 there's a turn where the lightning of the tower strikes, right? And the moon and the sun and this sacred wedding, this Heros Gamos, takes place, and the moon and the sun conjoin, and you have united your opposites, and you have liberated yourself from matter, and you are enlightened, and you are on the path to return to unity, until once again you reach the Fool and you go back to the beginning and jump off the abyss and return to matter. And 10 to 12 would then be Jupiter and tin, and 13, 14, 15, of course, becomes Saturn and lead. The goal of the alchemical process is to transform lead into gold. That's what we're doing here. And gold, of course, being a metaphor, like the sun, for spirit, for one, for unity. Like I said, I'm going to do another video and we'll go into much more detail, but I did just want to say that first so we have sort of a frame of reference for what I am talking about as we go through this. And here in our very first column, we see one, the monad, the magician. We see lots of wheels and lemniscates. He's got the Ouroboros around his waist. All these never-ending cycles. The one is eternal. So the magician here, he may be like unaware or unawakened in his consciousness. He hasn't reached that point yet, but he certainly is spirit descended to matter. And he is actually an awakened initiator, an awakened adept. That part of himself that aspires towards unity is awoken here in the magician. Here you see the one sort of expanded as the universe and its inner workings with the Wheel of Fortune. You see sulfur, salt, and mercury on the wheel, and at the bottom you have the symbol for dissolution. So you have the 3 elements, body, spirit, and body, mind, and spirit, you could say, plus dissolution, which is an alchemical process of sort of washing away impurities. So by adding 9 to the 10 of the Wheel of Fortune, you reach this, this solar enlightenment. You are the sun. You are reborn as the young child, in control of his animal self, in control of his opposites. Both the wheel and the sun, actually, right? They're these traveling wheels. They both are on this path of eternal return. This wheel this way and the sun through the sky, from the apex, travels through the underworld and back to the apex. Which is exactly what you see here with the serpent involuting towards matter, and this Hermes Anubis figure sort of evoluting up towards spirit, dying to its material self. Which is this entire process that's represented here is exactly what we seek as humans, as mankind. We seek to transform ourselves, our dull, lead selves, into gold, into the gold of the sun. We want to join the gods in their immortal realms after our mortal lives have ended. Okay, let's stop there for now with the first row. I really want to move on to the twos here. We go from 1, unity. We go right into duality with the 2, of course, right? Now, what happens when 1 becomes 2? 1 can take a step back and look at the other one, and there's differentiation, and where our unity can be looked at as this solar, active, male energy. You can look at the 2 as the bride to that solar energy, or the lunar, reflective counterpart to the 1. Not only has the 1 become 2, you now look at 1 and 2 as a pair. You have the solar principle and this lunar companion. She is the bride in the sacred marriage at the moon and the sun. Just like the moon is actually the sun's reflection. So the 2 is this lunar energy. You see it on the High Priestess card with her moon at the bottom. And you see her 2, her pairs of opposites in her columns, right? And what's come into existence here with the 2 is this tension, right? Because you now have 2, we have pairs of opposites, and there's a tension that now exists. There's almost a sadness that now you are not whole, There's a separateness that comes, a differentiation. With the 2 comes the knowledge that you are now separate from the 1. Knowledge of duality. Now, the goal with the 2, right, is to create an equilibrium, attempt to balance these 2. To balance these 2 opposites, which are really all pairs of opposites. Male and, like I said, male, female, light, dark, sun, moon, conscious, unconscious, matter, and spirit. So with separation comes judgment. You become conscious of distinctions, of differences. Therefore, judgment upon what is other than you and upon the self. And that's sort of what you see here, all 3 are judging figures, which again may be Waite's reasoning for this 8 and 11 justice strength swap, to get justice in this sort of a position with this sort of a numerical equivalent, which works, But the High Priestess, anyway, she shows, she's holding the Torah, which is the law. She is representative of like the ultimate law, being cosmic and not social, as justice could at times represent. Justice also shows this as above, so below, like you see in the magician here, with her sword in one hand and her scales in the other. But she presents the law to you, and for salvation to come, you have to follow this law. The salvation, of course, you see down here in the judgment card. But what you see here in 20 in the judgment card, right, is the angel awakening those who are, you could say, spiritually asleep. It's a resurrection. Gabriel's horn here is the call of spirit to us, to the material, to the mundane world, to wake up and to ascend, all of us together. Because we're in duality, we are the many, and we need to become one. No, it shows spirit in the process of liberation from matter. as do all these cards down here. And that's even like literally what you see here in the Judgment card. I think it's so beautiful. It's like this vibration of the music just buzzes and wakes up the spirit, what is actually alive and active and vital from what is being left behind, the dead matter, the coffins or the tombs of the earth. But justice can mete out more social types of justice, personal justice, as you try to balance the scales and put things in equilibrium within the self, where judgment represents more of a cosmic judgment or a cosmic justice. Now, with all the judgment happening here, the final judgment, you could say, is really comes when you get to the Fool card, or when you are the Fool, right? Because it's sort of like the Fool is the final judge, really. He's the last card in the Major Arcana, and of course the first again also. But because God is within and not without, the Fool really is the final judge. I like to think of him as, anyway. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's move on to the third column here, the Empress, where we have actually the High Priestess sort of guards the gateway to the Empress, the gateway to life, which is what you have with the 3. There's that old saying, right? What is that, Lao Tzu? 1 engenders 2, 2 engenders 3, and 3 engenders all things. And that sums it up pretty well. Basically, the 3 resolves the conflict of duality. It resolves that tension. It brings about a harmony. When you add 1 to the duality, you're adding spirit to the 2 or to the duality, and it's resolved. Alchemically speaking, that would be like taking active sulfur and passive material salt and giving it quicksilver or mercury, the catalyst that makes everything work. That's what the 3 is. It's a number of union. It's a number of synthesis. All are, so many gods, right, are considered triple gods or trinities, where you have, like, in the one God itself is the triple, the 3 factor, mother, father, child, or 1, the spirit being reborn through the duality as the Son again, or even the Holy Ghost being reborn, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And of course, it's often said, even of this Empress, that she is pregnant, which is a perfect way to depict her. She's sort of like an idea of the Virgin Mother. And at the 3, the 12, and the 21, the Empress, the Hangman, and the World, a unity or some sort of a synthesis is attained here. Where in the 1 you have spirit, in the 2 you could say you have matter, in the 3 you have matter that bears the spirit within matter, resolving the issues of above and below, harmonizing the 2 because of the 3. That's the same thing that the waterfall in the background does there, actually. It unites spirit and matter. Where in the 1, right, you have a unity. In the 2, you see an opposition. And in the 3, you have this resolution, this harmony. Again, you see sort of this as above, so below, the 2 opposites here, right? The Hangman, of course, being 12, is like he's so far along, he's fully descended into matter, and he knows he is spirit in matter. He's haloed, he is awakened, he is reversed. He's the dying god of the winter solstice. He's the god crucified, crucified Christ, or the god hung on the tree like Odin. He's the sacrificial god. He's spirit on the cross of matter, with his red and active pants and his blue feminine passive top, and this halo around his head that signifies a change in consciousness, really, an elevated consciousness or an enlightenment, an awakening of sorts. The Hanged Man here literally is active sulfur, you know? He's this fire of the mind burning away that which blinds him to what he is. But also he's literally the sign of sulfur. He's in that shape. So when I talk about the hanged man as the dying god at the winter solstice, you can sort of imagine it like the solstice, the summer solstice is up here, say, and the winter solstice is down here where the hanged man is, where his head is. You know, it represents the lowest point in the underworld. The hangman at 12 also is this very far down descent. He is about to die to himself. He is about to ascend back up the tree, you know? If the sun is down here, it's about to go back up towards unity. Now, it used to be, and we still sort of classically talk about it like that when we're talking about things like, you know, astrological relevance and mythology and things like that. But the winter solstice, classically, or at the time of the ancients, really 4,000 to 2,000 BC, like when all the great myths were being written, the winter solstice took place basically on the cusp of Capricorn and Aquarius, the two signs ruled by Saturn. So that's where the sun is at its lowest point before it is reborn. And what it's doing is heading back up towards the summer solstice, you could say also, which at that time then would have been represented by Cancer and Leo, the signs of the sun and the moon, which is, that's the Heros Gamos, that's the sacred marriage, that's the union of opposites, that's unity, you know? And that's where you're headed in the Hanged Man. You are literally reversed, hanging from spirit into matter, seeing things in the opposite way now. Where before you were looking at things from the point of view of matter, now you are looking at things from the point of view of spirit. Now you can die to your physical self or whatever and still live, you know? It's not a literal death, it's a spiritual death. So here to remember that although this entire path, all the way up to the devil, is our descent into matter, our descent to earth, it's this descent, it's this process that refines our gold, that refines our inner gold, refines our spirit. So it's all very, very important as we pass through all the cards, through the stairway of the planets, and through all the signs. This transformation is what we seek. Okay, anyway, and that same idea, if you add 9 to it, you elevate it to the level of the world, the emancipation, the liberation of the anima mundi, the soul of the world. Anima mundi, Sophia, Mercurius, all these things are names for spirit in matter, that which is being liberated in the world card. But you can clearly see in each of these cards this resolutive theme. Is resolutive a word? This theme of resolution. All right, so moving on to the 4, the 13, and the 22, or the 0. Now, with the 4, following the 3, of course, we see the mundane, manifest, physical world, the 4 elements, the 4 directions, all that the Emperor represents. The Emperor, of course, being our physical life, our manifest existence, our bodies, everything that is matter, even. And everything that is matter, everything that is alive, eventually dies. It's a perfect location for death. And then, of course, everything that dies is eventually reborn, just like you see in the Fool card here. You even see this little sun rising here, this overcoming, or the sun still rises because death is only a transformation, right? Sort of parallels what's going on in the Fool card here with the dawn or the sunrise here in the Fool card. The Fool also, I love this, he has a zodiacal belt of 12 stars around his waist. These two figures have the red plume in their hair, the red feather. Activity, maybe? Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. That's just sort of a cool column. The rest of the columns only have 2 cards. So number 5, we have the Hierophant, and 14, 1 plus 4 is 5. So we have Temperance and the Hierophant. This is what happens when you add 1, or spirit, to matter, 4. You get man, right? You get the head, the arms, and the legs, the pentagram, the pentacle. Now at the 5, with the 5 comes really the ability to act upon matter. And that's sort of what the Hierophant does. He's the mediator between worlds, the mediator between spirit and matter. The 4 and the 1. Spirit, 1, matter, 4. Just as really the 5, again, I've said this before, lies right in between, right in the very center, 4 on each side in our series of 9, in which 9 is completion, attainment, the end. And 14 actually does the same thing too, right? It lies in the very center of the sequence of 9 here. And I mean, just look at Temperance. What's happening there, you know? Mediating between the two. You know, the Temperance and its balancing of opposites, or mediating between the two, in control of the opposites. And this one's sort of in control of the opposites, this one's mediating between the two opposites. But a similar idea is happening here. No, there's a union taking place here. The 2 cards are even quite similar in color, right? Red and white. And red and white. The angel's wings are sort of red and blue, active and passive. And the white dress. 1 land, 1 foot on water, 1 foot on land. Mediating between the two. Union of the two. Union of opposites. Even the Temperance angel themselves being androgynous or hermaphroditic. I think Waite calls it androgynous at some point. And the androgynous look of the angel, a combination of male and female, a merging of opposites. But also I think it's kind of interesting that on the 14th day of the lunar cycle, that's the day of the full moon. So that's when the sun is just putting all of its light, shining all of its light onto the full moon. But that happens to take place on the 14th day. Again, you see this, this equilibrium of opposites, this merging of opposites. Just like that bright full moon bearing all the light of its opposite, the sun, and appearing as a full moon. Okay, moving on. 6 and 15, because 1 plus 5 equals 6. Here at the Lovers, you see, I mean, obviously the 2 cards just look so much alike anyway, but the Lovers card here, and the number 6 really being the number 4, the elemental world, plus 2, plus duality, the elemental world plus duality, Adam and Eve, male and female. But that's what you have here, Adam and Eve in the elemental world, in the Garden of Eden. Now, Eve here represents this sort of attraction to the sensual world, right? She is the one who is tempted. She is temptation. And this, of course, and this Christian scene here, right, leads to the fall of man, their expulsion from the garden of Adam and Eve. But Waite even says that really it's her impulse, it's through her impulse that man or mankind will arise and complete itself. It's through that fall into matter, that necessary step, not a punishment, that evolution of matter, that our inner gold is found. And there's this bright shining sun of hope behind the angel here that sort of anticipates that. There's even a mountain right here in the center, which is very classically a symbol of the alchemical great work, or the opus itself. 5 plus 1 equals 6, the number of man after the fall, because this is man, right? Spirit in matter. So the lovers being represented as sort of this whole scene of the fall is really perfect. I love that. I even like how Waite gets this whole idea of choice in the Lovers card. It's not, a Cupid or angel firing at the man or at one of the women for the man to choose one of these women. It's we know what choice is about to happen, but there's a choice about to be made here. To fall, to go through and do the work for the process to start here. But here in this card, Waite has chosen to illustrate a scene that takes place not quite in the world, but it takes place in the Garden of Eden before the fall of man. And also the sixes can be about equilibrium, ambivalence even, but they are the union of two triangles, right? One facing upright, one facing downwards. You have that Star of Solomon sort of a shape. Fire and water. That shape can also signify the human soul. And that's what you have here too, this union of fire and water, male and female. Equilibrium. Where in the Lover's card we have an equilibrium, and the Devil we have a sort of stasis. Very, very similar image. Instead of the angel, you have the devil, and instead of their freedom to choose, they are chained to the cubic throne or stone of the bat-winged devil. So the sixth column, like the column of the twos with justice, judgment, and the high priestess, is about this opposition. And the Lover's card really is the first time that man faces any sort of a judgment. Because Eve, or man in general, just makes this conscious decision to follow the serpent. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just evolution. It's just what needs to be done if we want to rescue the gold from within ourselves. We have to first purify it through matter. Here in the Lovers, the two pillars of the High Priestess have become the two trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or the tree of death, because that's what it will eventually lead to. Again, not a bad thing. Since eating its fruit results in an expulsion from the garden, and mortality in matter. And of course, adding 9 to the Lover's card elevates it to the next level, being this chthonic level of the devil. Man's deepest descent into matter. This is the lowest point before the awakening happens in the Tower card. The opposition theme of the Lover's 6, continuing with 15, the devil, where it was paradise, now it is hell. This opposition, above and below. The two cards are literally in opposition to each other. That conscious decision to follow this serpent, by the way, is exactly what you see in that little serpent right there going down into matter. That's the serpent that Eve follows around the Wheel of Fortune. You also see in the Devil card here, right, our adversary, our darker half, our lower component, which needs to be redeemed, alchemically perhaps. The resolution of polar opposites requires that self be devoured or integrated with your shadowy aspect. Or your shadowy opposite. It's almost like the symbol of the Ouroboros, who eats its own tail. It's still a symbol of wholeness, but it's devouring itself, which can be sort of painful. It's like that drought, right? The poison yet healing drought. The one will return to itself from duality and diversity to unity. Just like our path through matter, through the world, through life is painful and a little bit poisonous. 15 also represents the abyss. It is the lord of the underworld. It is Saturn, it is Capricorn, it is the winter solstice. And like I said, the two are chained to the cube or the throne, but it's a cube of matter even that they are chained to. All right, moving on from 6 to 7 to victory and resolution. It's the last step in the alchemical process and the last step in the stairway of planets, 7. And besides it being a victory, attaining the goal, besides it being the culmination of all the work you've done to release the gold, the victory achieved is also the release of the figures from the devil, as you see in the Tower card. And 7, the number 7 in general, represents a perfect order or a completed period, a complete cycle. You can look at the 7, of course, as a combination of the elemental world and the Trinity, or the square and the triangle. Just like you see on the chest of Temperance, right? A symbol of 7, of the stairway of planets, you could say. But the 7 is that, right? It's the completion of the alchemical process. You've traveled through the ladder of lights, the stairway of planets. However, it's not a full completion. It's more like a temporary cessation. It's not that final attainment. Only by adding 3 or adding another triangle to the square and the triangle do you get 10, really, right? 7 plus 3 is 10, but 10 equals the 1 again. Only by adding 3 do you find this fulfillment, this unity, the human soul united with spirit. So we're not there yet anyway. We are only at the 7. And it's still a great victory. You'll actually see how the Tower is one hell of a victory also. So from 6 to 7, you're taking the last step in the alchemical process, the last step of the stairway of planets. And just like this victory you see here in the Chariot card is a victory of you working the gold from the lead. That's the victory. That is exactly what you see happening here in the Tower card. You can actually think of it more as a scene of rescue. A rescue from above and a rescue from below. Rescue from above with this lightning and from below with the fire, like the fire of the alchemist's Athanor. What you see here actually is the separation of the gold from the lead, or Saturn from the sun, you could say. But it's also the separation of moon and sun, or queen and king. Because these are the polar opposites, and the polar opposites must be purified before they are reunited and married at the Heros Gamos, the moon and the sun, the conjunction of the two. So here again, the Chariot and the Tower, you have a resolution of the opposition that we faced in the Lover's card and in the Devil's card. And in the Devil card, the Tower actually frees the lovers from the grips, from the chains of the devil in the material world. This is where ascent actually starts. You start working your way back up towards unity with the Tower. Really, the Tower card is a card of liberation. It's not a card of total and complete ruin or anything. It's a card of liberation. Esoterically speaking, that is. Once you've gotten to the lowest that you can go, once you've explored your unconscious, you could say also, there's only one way to go, and that's up. So the lightning comes down, really an act of God saying it's time, and you're off. And it frees the fiery essence in matter, the spirit, for essence to be liberated from the prima materia. Opposites must be separated, and that's exactly what you see here, the separation. It's a picture of two people, but it's also an image of wholeness, just being separated out into its parts. Queen Moon and King Sun are our unconscious and our conscious at the same time, as they are our male and our female. As above, so below. The microcosm and the macrocosm, it's all represented in these cards. It's interesting, too, that the Tower card here, you see it in the Tower de Marseille also, but so clearly in the Rider-Waite-Smith, this golden crown just thrown away, thrown off the Tower. And what it really represents, I think, is this solar principle, the crown, yes, but as it's separated from matter. The crown here really representing that this solar principle has been separated from matter and restored to spiritual unity, to autonomy. You know, there's no crowns that you see on anyone, even though the spiritual evolution really kicks off here. No one's wearing crowns after this point. All the crowns come before the Tower. And all the crowns actually show up on the cards associated with the descent of spirit into matter. It's this listening to above, because with that crown, that's what the crown sort of symbolizes. Above in union with below, the descent of spirit to matter. This crown sort of symbolizing that. But it's not needed after the Tower card because you are in direct communication with one, with unity, with self, with spirit now. You don't need a royal crown symbolic of something greater than you to show you the way anymore. And the Tower is absolutely 100% what shatters the chains of materiality that bind these lovers, Adam and Eve, in the Devil card in 15. The Tower is the action of above on below. It's the celestial fire. It's a very active force. It's sort of like the dawn and like illumination even. This bolt of lightning coming from the sky, coming from above, coming from God, from spirit, is the end of our mundane authority or our mundane autonomy. You have to surrender to spirit, exactly what you see in the next card here, in order to move forward. In this card too, you also see these, in the Tower card here, there we go, you also see those, they almost look like white dots in the camera now, but they're white yods, the letter yod. And there are 22 of them. There are like 22 yods of fire, representing the number of cards in the Major Arcana, the keys of initiation, which is what the tarot is. They are that which lead us, all of us, the initiates, right? Those who walk the path to the heights of the Fool and to his and our spiritual liberation. That's the result of walking the royal road, the Major Arcana. Okay, let's move on to strength, number 8 here in this deck. Number 8 and number 17, the star. But number 8 as a number, it's the intermediary sort of between the square and the circle. The 8 can be represented as like 2 squares or an octagon. So it does start to sort of approximate a circle. It also has lots of associations with regeneration because of its approximation of the eternal circle. Or really more as an intermediary between the square and the circle. The square representing terrestrial order and the circle eternal. So it's regeneration. Also its shape, because of its lemniscate shape. It looks like the intertwining serpents of the caduceus and even the Ouroboros, right, biting its own tails. The balancing of opposite or opposing forces. So 8, strength, right? Number 8 here. You can look at it as it's like 6 plus 2, right? The lovers sprung from their material bondage in 15 by the lightning of the Logos in 16. You see them again. You see the two, the duality, the male and the female here. The pairs of polar opposites represented right here again on the strength card. These two, these two, these two, these two, magician and high priestess, however you want to look at it. But Adam and Eve, or the King Sun and Queen Moon, mother, father. Male, female, active, passive. I shall stop listing pairs of opposites right now. But that's what you see on the strength card. It's, again, it's a symbolic image. What you see there, though, is two polar opposites. Is the two polar opposites operating in a perfect harmony. As sort of like the woman can represent that Mercury or Quicksilver, and the lion represented by sulfur, which is red. So it's sort of like the red-caped king from this tower card has become lion, and the blue-dressed woman has become the woman in white. And he's all these things too. He's Adam. He's the sun descending to the winter solstice. He is the descending Holy Spirit. He is active sulfur. He is the solar spiritual power. He is clothed in metal, right? And lodged in the earth. That's the alchemical way of looking at it. And then Mercury and or Quicksilver, the woman, is its yin aspect to all those things we said. It's complementary and polar opposite. No, she's subdued the lion. In Waite's here, she's closing the mouth of the lion, whereas in the Tarot de Marseille and older tarot decks, it's like she's opening its mouth or wrestling with it. Here the work is done. There's an element of completion and termination to this column. She has subdued this penetrating masculine wild force. And balanced it with her more passive force. So similar to what happens next with the Hieroskamos, this active principle is subdued by the passive principle. Just like in the Hieroskamos when the sun is swallowed by the moon. Now 8, also the number 8 in medieval cosmology was equated with the idea of the stars of the firmament. So this is sort of what lies beyond the planets, the great starry eternity, really, infinity beyond that. But they called it the Ogdoad. And the achievement of these fixed stars of the firmament to be able to get there meant that you had overcome all the planetary influences. You are beyond. They cannot affect you anymore. So there's even a level of achievement, associated with the 8s. And that's sort of what you see here in the star too. So like how before in the tower we had this separation of opposites with the man and woman falling from the tower. Now these two opposites must be cleansed. They must be purified before they can be rejoined in the next card in the sequence here, in the moon card. But the star is that purification. You see this woman with the same two chalices from the temperance card, these pairs of opposites, these opposite flows, if you will. But like the temperance angel, actually the star has 1 foot dipped into this pool of water while 1 foot remains on earth, but one is dipped into this pool, and it's not quite, it's the same pool really that you see in the next card too, in the moon card. These are not they're not the abyss of the Fool. The abyss of the Fool leads all the way down to Saturn, to this cold lead, the abyss of the Negredo. This is not that. These are like pools of spirit, really. They're evolutive depths. Does that make sense? From which forms are born, really. From this pool or abyss, one can evolve. You evolve from it. You don't descend into it. the pool and the star card anyway is like this cosmic mind stuff, you know? It's the stuff that'll take on all sorts of different forms in the material world. And the woman in the star card dips her foot into the pool to renew it, to renew the world. It's a way of cleansing through water, form, and matter. And the star card, what you see really is a spiritualizing of nature. This anima mundi, or the bride of the one, the bride of the sun. This being his lunar counterpart, right? To spirit. Anyway, to complete the cycle in general, she requires a marriage to the one. And 17 plus 1 gives you 18, the moon, and the heroskamos of sun and moon. And that's exactly what you see here. This is not just a moon up here. It is a moon in front of a sun, eclipsing the sun. The rays from behind are solar. It's a union. It's a marriage. And just like we were saying in the pool of the star card, in the pool of the moon card, we see a crustacean emerging. And like I said, this is an evolutive pool. The forms that come out of it at first are low, right? But through evolution, they'll eventually yield man. That's the scene that's going on down here too. You know, just like you see in the wheel card, in the Wheel of Fortune card, you see I lost my camera. There it is. You know, here you see this half animal, half man figure evolving up, coming up out of that pool of forms, you could say. It's all just random shit on these cards. Okay, what else is going on here? And also this crustacean emerges right at the beginning, in the waite card anyway, of this golden path of ascent that goes all the way up the mountain to the top, to the spiritual heights, which is where you find your hermit, all the way up at the top of the mountain, the spiritual heights, up denoting spirit. It's kind of cool, actually. In this eclipse happening, right? The sun is actually swallowed by the moon, and will be reborn here at 19 in the sun card. Really, just as number 16, the tower is also a necessary sacrifice. Maybe not as willing as a sacrifice of like that of the hanged man, but they're all liberating. They're all liberating sacrifices, but especially the tower card, you know, that's the one that commences the ascent after the deepest descent into the abyss in the devil. 19 is also spirit, or God reborn in a new form. Here you see him as the child of the heroskamos. He is the result of the union of sun and moon, the union of opposites. And his descent, his return again, is inevitable. You know, he is the one who takes many forms but remains indivisible. And overall, in our last column here, can't you just like really feel the similarities in the last two cards here? Like, just in tone and just knowing the tarot like we do, right? The Hermit really does have a lot in common with the feeling you sort of get when you look at the moon card, right? So we talked about the number 9, but the number 9 in the tarot is the Hermit, right? Who is really a transformation of the magician himself, and the magician being a youthful representation, you could say, of the Hermit. But what the Hermit follows is his light, the light of the anima mundi, the light of spirit. And I like to think of the star in the Hermit's lantern as actually an 8-pointed star. I like to think of it as the 6-pointed star turned 3D, three-dimensional. And then the 8 plus the 1 of the Hermit, the 1. You have 9. But basically, the hermit follows this light of spirit, and what the whole image depicts is the soul's or man's aspiration of the material or physical for the spiritual. And that's why he's depicted at this spiritual elevation. You know, he is an elevated person. And as the 9 is attainment and realization and completion and all those things, the above and below, the upward pointing triangle and the downward pointing triangle conjoined in the hermit's lamp. And the hermit, of course, longs to reunite above with below. So our hermit here is not really necessarily seeking anything. It's more like he's actually already arrived. The beacon or lantern that he carries and looks with is really more of a beacon for us. You know, Waite actually says, to quote him, you know, about the hermit, he says, "This beacon intimates that where I am, you also may be." It's a beacon of hope for us. And just like the one is sort of triple in nature, the Holy Trinity, he's in both the Father and the Son, and in the womb of the Virgin Mother. Like we said before, he's both. He's ancient and he's youthful. He's ancient and he is eternal, like the magician and the hermit. You know, the Philosopher's Stone, right? The product of alchemy. The goal of the great work is to create the Philosopher's Stone. At first it's represented by like an old man, this whitening at the beginning that happens. And then at the end it becomes a youth, quite like, you know, through the reddening stage. Thus you have this baby here, right? A baby on the sun card. A very young youth, a newborn. You know, this baby, this youth is the offspring of spirit and matter at the Heros Gamos, like we said. And you also, and it's also the reason you have this youth in the Fool card too. The Fool is very, very youthful. He's about to take off again and descend into matter and descend to Earth. So one more note on the moon card here. You know, the moon is, you could think of the moon as like the shadow of the sun, sort of, right? It's this shadowy side, this darker aspect. In Jungian terms, it's the unconscious, right? So it's often a terrifying, a scary scene or place to be. While above, this devouring, this consuming is taking place. It can be a really, really dark sounding card when you talk about it. It does have a certain amount of chaos and pain and torture, maybe even associated with it. You know, just like this suffering in matter that takes place. But the imagery here is very much related to this idea of putrefaction, the alchemical process. Like we said with the tower, you know, you have to know the deepest, darkest parts of yourself to be whole. But it isn't necessarily a frightening scene. It's really more of a beautiful reconciliation. It's a goal. You know, this union here is the goal. You've gone from this lowly sort of a place all the way up to this absolute union within yourself and to spirit. You know, the scene here with the path and the trials that the dog and the wolf represent. It's actually really quite a similar image to the suffering that Christ endures on the cross at the crucifixion. It's Christ suffering on the elemental cross. Okay guys, I think I will stop there. I hope some of this stuff made sense. I definitely plan on doing a video using the Rider-Waite-Smith and talking about the alchemical process and the ascent and the descent of spirit much more in-depthly. And also, if you guys want to see any more layouts, any more Major Arcana layouts more in-depthly, please absolutely let me know. This has been really fun sharing this stuff with you guys. It's exciting. I really enjoy this looking and delving into relationships and pairings and opposites and all these kinds of things. I think it's really, really cool to look at. And I thank you guys for watching. I will see you all real soon. Bye.